Hello, and welcome back to Gatekeepers. In this episode, motivating players to action. Tonight, we're going to be discussing what we can do as game masters to motivate our players to take action rather than be acted upon. If you have not already done so, please consider subscribing to this channel and the other channels linked in the video description below. If you enjoyed tonight's content, please consider hitting that like button as it really helps the channel. If you don't enjoy this content, let us know in the comments and hit the dislike button. I won't take any offense to that whatsoever. That's why it's there. Without further ado, let's get into the panel. Hello, my name's Jaide, and this is my Tabletop Tavern. And joining me this evening is Conall the Cigar DM. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hey, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fairly well. Also joining us this evening is going to be Shadow from Shadow and Sun.
Howdy, folks.
Welcome. Your audio definitely sounds a lot better. I can tell you're using the laptop tonight.
Yeah, it's finally working properly. Knock on wood, awesome. That sort of thing.
All right, and also joining us this evening will be MarHawkman. Welcome.
Good evening.
So, are we ready to talk about the topic tonight?
Yes. Hopefully, Bo, if you're out there, you'll get your ass in here.
You know, if I keep doing this show, I'm going to have to get like a cigar sponsor because cigars are not getting any cheaper right now, actually. Two of my favorite cigars have gone up by like 15 cents. You're thinking 15 cents is not that bad. It is that bad when you don't have the 15 cents.
Or if you
I thought you were going to hit us with the real men line. You know, well, how many do you smoke a day? You know?
I mean, I do have to look at this from the angle of like, oh, it's only 15 cents until you think about it. It's like, oh, wait, that's per cigar, isn't it?
Yep.
That's not tax. That's just the price of the price of the cigar has gone up. Like, mother.
All right. Well, this is a topic suggested by Bo Paints Mini. Bo, if you're out there and listening, well, glad to have the topic, and you have the link available to you if you wish to join us. So, this topic is about those players who don't really take initiative to do anything. They can just kind of sit there quietly in the corner. And, sometimes, when the players take the back seat to either an ongoing story or, their world or their character just exists in a world and they don't really, come forward to be a player or to actually take action. We, the game masters, it falls on us to try to bring them forward and kind of exemplar those characters and bring them into the light. And there are ways to do this, and then there are ways not to do this. But, there are also those players out there that no matter how much coaxing you as the game master put into them, you will never dislodge them from their stance. Those players just, they're there to be there for the group, but not to be there to shine. They're doing it as a kind of a pastime activity, something to fill the void, as it were. And there's, there's nothing wrong with that kind of player. There truly isn't, but they're there because their friends are there, and that's where they want to be. Now, granted, at my table, I don't care for the passive player. I want all of my players to be able to take center stage at some point within the game or within the story or the happenings that are going on. So when I do get that passive player, I work on them. From the very beginning of the game, I start trying to learn about my players and start trying to get them, going and coming out into the world and, taking part within the world, to give them a little bit of agency, give them a little bit of control over, well, what's out there. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking tonight. So first and foremost, I'm going to go around the panel on this one. I'm hoping for some pretty good examples. First and foremost, have you ever had a player who just sits there quietly in the background of the game and not interacting on their own at your table? Conall, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I find it when I'm running a table for kids, I will naturally have maybe one or two that goes through the motions per se. When there's combat, they will, as somebody would put it, mother may I. They don't so much do the mother may I, as has been pointed out by other players, but when it's combat, they're on cue, they know what they're doing, and it's awesome. But when it comes to the other half of it, they just kind of sit back and just let the other players at the table just run the show. And I kind of, I see this in teenagers, and I've seen this in adults. Some people are just shy. Some people really want to play. But when it comes time to our role play or the other aspects of our hobby, they just shut up. And I don't hold it against them, because not everybody is a vocal person. Not everybody wants the limelight on all this time. They go, they do their thing. They don't argue with the rest of the party, but they're just quiet. And yeah, I've tried to get them to talk more. I tell them to, next time don't talk so much. You're being over talk, being playful. But yeah, I've definitely have it I've had at least two people I can think of at my table that are very much like that.
Okay. Mara, I'm going to go to you next. Have you ever had this at your tables where there's a player who's just always quiet, and don't name names, just, tell us about that experience and what you've done to try to, coax role play out of them or involvement out of them?
Well, that's actually one of those things that some people, like Conall says, like some people's personalities just, like, they enjoy the experience of TTRPG. It's just, they just feel more comfortable watching other people do it, I guess is one way to put it, than actually being the person in charge of a scenario or something. And I honestly find that one of the simplest ways is to be like, okay, so what are you going to do? Just like, like rotating on people, just to prompt the person to, do something, to remind them of the fact that they're actually supposed to be playing the game.
Okay. And Shadow, have you ever had this happen with any of your players over the vast number of years you've been running games, where you have that one or two, maybe three players who just sit there every night and never really say anything?
There's usually only one of those per group, from my experience. Maybe two if they come together. I had this boyfriend and girlfriend who later got married and had a happy family and what have you. Bob and Ann, yeah, I am going to call them out because I haven't talked to them in 20 years. So, and believe it or not, it was the girl who was, she was loud and, on it. She and she was actually rather new, whereas he was relatively experienced, and we had played together for years, and the whole time he would just, be kind of mellow, and sit back and let her do all the talking and get, more of the spotlight, which was actually rather charming, up until I ran this game where I made pre-made characters, okay, for, I want to say, almost 10 players, and I gave them each 2 characters, right? And I specifically made these characters for them, and it was actually a superhero campaign. Yeah, pretty much. And it wasn't until I made this one character for him, and Bo would get a kick out of this, because I made a human character, and I made like a dog man, let's just say. And it wasn't until he started playing the dog man that he would do the voice, the whole thing. It was like, kind of Scooby-Doo-ish, but he would, that's when he finally, came out of his shell. Maybe it was because the character was so outlandish compared to things they had all played before. Mind you, I gave them all some really, really freaking cool characters, and I ended up running that game with them for over 10 years. I'm technically still running it, but Bob and Ann had to, have kids and do the other things. They were not too much younger. Well, she was 14 years younger than he, and they went on to have a nice, happy life, as far as I heard, like 10 years ago. But sometimes it's the character, sometimes it's the player. Maybe if you can really, I always encourage people to make the character they've always wanted to play, and maybe that will help. What's up, Bo? Slacker, why aren't you here?
This is your topic, sir. So, well, that's awesome. Sometimes you're right. It is sometimes the right character for the right player that brings the player forward into the character. So sometimes you got to kind of keep that in mind. Like maybe the player's just not feeling all the options. Maybe they need a different option at the table. That's something I didn't actually think of when I was conceiving the questions for this.
Score one for the old guy.
Well, speaking of the questions I did come up with, there are ways we can get players to do things, and because this is a game, huh? Oh yeah.
I said, "What's up, Six Nations?"
Because this is a game, there are game elements to it. The risks, reward systems, and therein. One of the things you can do is incentives. And what an incentive is the players will gain something for doing something. So what incentives do you offer players who take the initiative to act, especially during the downtime or the non-combat time of the game? Like, what incentives do you offer? Mara, I'm going to start with you on this one.
That's actually one of those that isn't that specific question is one that I've not had a huge amount of experience with. Although recently with my family game and one of the players who just, didn't feel the need to finish filling out her character sheet for Star Trek Adventures. Part of it actually turned out to be not being shy or uninterested. It's that she's not a Star Trek person. And she's like, it's a Star Trek thing. What's that? And it's just incentivizing this, though, is one of those things. It's like, you do know that this means that your character is more likely to succeed when they actually do things, right? Because the way Star Trek Adventures works is that you go through the life path character creation system, and every step of the process adds ability points to your character or some effect that happens when they try doing things and stuff like that. And the more of those you have, the more likely you are to succeed at skill checks when you're doing things, playing the game. And yeah, not having the character sheet only about halfway filled out kind of cripples your character. And that was one of those things I experienced. It's like, yes, you want your character to be able to go to doing things. Well, you need to finish. Then there's my nephew who just wrote his name down on the sheet of paper, and that his name, not the character's name, his name on the sheet of paper, and that was about as far as he got with his character.
How old is this kid?
Like 12 or something.
I think I've turned in homework that looked that way.
His handwriting definitely looks like what you would imagine homework to look like.
Okay. Well,
in his case, I had to manually run him through the whole thing because the fact that he really just didn't get it.
Also, being young, kind of takes a bit of a brain, bit of a more mature brain to be able to, formulate a character, especially in systems that don't break it down in simple terms.
The funny thing with him, though, is that he actually had a concept that he'd actually thought out in his head that he thought was a cool character idea. It's just that he didn't write that on paper. He just wrote down his name. He didn't bother writing out a name for the character. He was just using his own name for the character. But whatever.
No, I mean, that works. I know I've seen several players do that, but I'm gonna go ahead and put a pin in this because I do have questions regarding further thought on what you've given me. But I'm gonna move to Conall next. Conall, what incentives do you offer players to act, not necessarily in turn order, but and not necessarily just in combat? Like what do you offer?
Well, depends on who I want. Always depends on who I'm gaming with. It's, for example, for the kids, if I kind of feel like a teacher, which is kind of weird. And so when I'm DMing for kids, because they sit down, they get their stuff done, get their dice, their character sheet out, their fig out, and I award them like anywhere from like 10 to 25 XP points just for doing that. But I'm not trying to train other people's kids, but it kind of feels like I'm, having them, learn how to get ready for what they're about ready to do. When somebody's talking and everybody else is being quiet, I normally award them in some way of like that. Just being polite to each other is a big thing, especially when it comes to kids, because kids and adults, but a lot of ways, kids will just talk right over each other. And there's nothing wrong with being what's the word I want to use? Having manners. And don't give me that look. There's too many rude people out there. So I award them for a good behavior and getting ready to do the game and just behaving. I know that's kind of lame, but it works, at least for the kids.
No, Conall, that's actually really good. We have a saying in my household: you don't go, you don't get. It usually applies to going to the grocery store, but it can apply here as well. If you don't go out of your way, you're not going to get anything out of the ordinary. For me, I do the experience point, but another thing I started implementing a very long time was, like the fate or the hero coin type ability, or mechanic, I should say. But I only gave it out for making everybody at the table laugh their ass off. And believe it or not, humor, sometimes people are more susceptible or more open to humor. And if they can come up with a joke or something, I know a lot of people really hate that, but I'm playing with my, best friends, and sometimes some of them, would have a bad day or something like that, but then come up with something, just some comment or what have you that just makes everybody laugh. And for a while we started calling them brownie points, but then we translated them to something else. If you've never heard of brownie points, I don't know what to tell you, but another way I use, or another thing I use besides experience points, because experience points is like absolutely crucial, especially in games that don't use milestones, because then people see the actual effect. That's one of the reasons why I don't like milestones, is because it keeps everybody, even the slackers, kind of all level. And when you're playing with a game without those, and you watch players keep getting points and points and points, and you're the quiet guy, it makes sense real quick how you need to open your mouth, even if it's a dumb thing, even if it's wrong, at least you're engaging in the situation. And trust me, when players see the other players advancing past them, and if they ever say anything, it gives you the opportunity. There's like, why am I not going up as fast as everybody else? Well, because you're not participating and engaging as much as they are. They're getting into it. They're getting bonuses. One of the ways you get bonuses, or even just XP, is for role playing well. Many games have that under the category of what you get experience points for, role playing well. Well, if you're role playing crappy, or just quiet, that's not well. Another thing is, in original AD&D, which was my game of choice for many decades, when it came to training, if you didn't play really well, you would be penalized. Training would take 1 to 4 weeks, and if you played really, really well, it was only 1 week. But if you played really, really poorly, it would take you as many as 4 weeks of training. And that also drives home to the players that they need to be more interactive and be involved in the game. Hey, Grandma, welcome to the show. The last thing is treasure. Believe it or not, if you have players that are looking better and more descriptive and specific as to where they're looking, I can't tell you how many times I would reward a player with some little thing because they actually looked in the opponent's shoes. Back in the old days, up until pretty recently, people would hide stuff in their shoes and their socks, even have special shoes made, heels and what have you, where you can, twist them and there's a little cubby hole in there, a little hidey spot. Well, if my players, do that, well, chances are, just by saying that, I'm going to throw a little something in there.
I mean, even in modern times, you just take the insole out, put a folded up piece of paper down, and then just stand on it.
Yep. Money, coins, handcuff keys, things like that are all still common. I could go into that for quite a while. But if the players look for things, you've killed the monsters, you're in the room. Hold on, I'll address that in just a second. If they tell me specifics, they're going to get better results. If they just say, we searched the room, okay, well, maybe I'll make them roll and give them a little bit of a bonus. But if they get really specific, and tell me little things, then they're going to get rewarded for it. Now, can you bring back up that last L comment?
Actually, I'm going to welcome Bo Paints Minis to the
Hey,
stream. Welcome.
better late than never, buddy.
Yay.
Mrs. Paints Minis has been sick, and then she's on a road trip. So I'm Mr. Mom today, and I made the kids a full-on dinner. Hopefully they'll eat. I've got one who's kind of hit or miss when it comes to eating, but I tell you, the things that I'm hearing and the problems that I've had with this is that running a role-playing game or playing a role-playing game is a collaborative effort, right? It's the DM's game. The players are literally characters in the DM's world, but if the players don't participate in that world, then it feels, I don't want to say insulting, it feels hurtful to me as the GM, right? I go through this effort. I want to build this immersive universe where everything works and all these gears are in motion and the players can do anything they want. And then you've got a party, and maybe it gets worse when the party gets bigger, but you've got 1 or 2 or 3 guys that just kind of just sit around and wait for things to happen to them. And then to compound that, it looks bad for everyone when you have 1 or 2 players in that party that are very proactive, and it seems like they're stealing the limelight. They're not stealing the limelight. They're the only ones that are actually being proactive in the game world. And so I feel caught. I feel torn. I want everyone to be active, super active, but I can't and I won't make players participate. That's the inspiration. That's the whole reason I asked, experienced GMs, what do you do without coming off, like a dick? Because again, it's like a video game. If you're playing The Legend of Zelda and you make Link just stand there, Link's just going to stand there all day long. The universe is going to go on around
it.
Real quick, can I address L? I'll make it quick. L, yeah, I did not mean loud or boisterous. I just meant very, very active. Yeah, you could be, quiet and role play, serious, and you don't have to be all crazy and get up and gesture and do all that crap. But if you're just sitting there like a bump on a log, or worse, on your phone or reading,
Yeah.
and
Playing
maybe
another
just-
video game while you're playing an RPG on Discord.
yeah, unacceptable.
Now, JR had a question earlier in the evening. What about the other end of the spectrum, the player who overshadows others? I'm going to go ahead and quickly address this one. Good.
I honestly think that you could spend all night on that one, or at least an hour. So take your best shots, guys.
I'll start with this one. So for the player who overshadows the other players, it is the game master's job or position to say, hey, you're doing a lot of things. That's really awesome. I encourage that. But I'm going to move the camera from you to another player. And I'm going to need you to not metagame and think about the actions you have taken and where they're going to lead you next. And I will get back to you. So to me, it's on to the onus is onto the game master to not necessarily beat the other player down, but to address the issue and be, hey, I've got more than just one player here. I need to move the camera to other players. I'll get back to you. Be thinking about what you want to do next with what information you've already gotten for your role play bit.
I mean, I'm personally a big fan of the whole, like, okay, that's what you're doing. So what are you guys doing approach to handling it? Because just like, I mean, it's a very stereotypical thing in RPG. It's just like having everyone say, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And just like going around the table for it. But it's something that's effective.
So, anyone else have any comments for the player who
Overactive
somehow
player?
overshadows the others?
That's an easier problem to identify because you'd see some conflict, right? If a player's talking over another player, or if a player's not giving other players ample opportunity to participate, we see that at the table, and then we can. The best way to address that, I think, we play a lot of games by Discord, and it's real easy for me to send a private message to any of the players and work those things out discreetly. Say, hey, let somebody else have a turn, or hey, maybe somebody else, or hey, what do you think? Are these the same? Are these two sides of the same coin? Am I missing something?
So JR had asked, what about the other end of the spectrum for this specific question?
Are these problems related? Do I deal with them the same way? That's what I'm asking.
No, definitely not address it the same way, because that could backfire, or have a player like that tends to take things rather personal, and a lot of things are all about them, and think of it as an attack against them, as opposed to
No, that's why I'd want to do it via private message, so that I'm not embarrassing the player in front of the other players.
Well, depends on the scenario.
Easier to do online.
Depends on the scenario. Shauner's in chat, and he actually made a good point. Social contracts. Make sure the players understand what is expected at the table. This line has been said in other streams for people to stay in their own lanes. Your character's awesome. I get that your character's awesome. Congratulations. You have the universe, the power of the universe at your fingertip. But you can't heal that person. The only person over there who can heal that person is a cleric. So I need you and your character to step off and let that person have a turn. Sometimes, online, I completely get it. Sending the person a text message, hey, stop it, whatever wordage you want to use. But sometimes calling the guy, child, teenager out, it's like, listen, works. You're not trying to embarrass them, but there's a reason why that method of dealing with children has been used in the past and still being used. You call somebody out for their behavior. They don't like the way that other people are looking at them. I'm not saying it's the best approach, but sometimes it works.
Okay. So, Mar, do you have anything to add onto this?
Not really. It's just like there's not the number one thing to remember is that you want to disrupt the flow of the game as little as possible. So you don't want to stop and have a 10-minute discussion about the proper etiquette of playing the game. You want to just like be like you want to guide things in a different direction rather than sidelining things, and so you can talk about why you don't like what they're doing.
Sometimes you have to stop the game.
I mean,
depending on
yes,
the behavior.
sometimes.
Sometimes you need to stop the game, for children and adults. Timmy, stop being a dick. Joey, put down the scissors. There's no cutting in this game. It works for all ages.
But that's undesirable. I guess is about the easiest way to put it.
Right. I'm just, I'm coming this from a game shop point of view, not a private tables or private.
So,
Great, Scott.
so now, Bo, I know you got here a little late. So the first question of the evening, and I'm willing to back it up just a little bit for you on this. The first question of the evening was, do you have at your table, or have you had at your table, situations where one or more players just is not participating?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the whole reason I posed this question is because, I mean, define. I don't want to call anybody out. I think we know. I think that some players, I especially when I play online, I require a degree of engagement that playing in person, it might not be as intense. But when I'm playing via Skype or Discord, I can't see what's going on at your desk. I can't see what's going on at your table. And so I can't see body language. I can't see facial expressions clearly. Most of our communication is not only nonverbal, but body, right? I'm not picking up on body language when I'm playing via electronic media. And so I need much more active communication, and especially verbal communication. And that also includes like tone and inflection and that kind of engagement. And if I don't have that, I feel stuck as a GM. And the last thing in the world I want to feel is stuck, because I want, like you said, there's a social contract, there's a collaborative effort, there's some entertainment value that we're trying to have here as players and as GM, right? We're trying to do this thing, and every player has a different motivation for sitting at the table. And if your motivation is to watch, like you're at the play, that's fine, but I need to know that up front, right? Some people are more introverted, and that's fine. I think what I need to know is, like you said, we need to communicate and find out where everybody is. And I want to make sure that nobody feels embarrassed or left out, or they're not having fun, or worse, not only they're not having fun, but they're being, singled out or picked on, right?
Okay.
I love it when you're playing online. Let me jump on this really quick.
Sure.
I love it when you're playing online and all the cameras are off for whatever reason, and you ask somebody a question, and their natural response is to nod.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I need an answer. I did answer you.
Yeah,
How? I nodded. I can't see that. Oh, right, camera's off. My bad.
That's actually one of those things that I've seen with virtual tabletops is DM asking someone what they want to do, and instead of actually making a verbal response, they move pieces around on the virtual tabletop to indicate what they're going to do, which is something that you could do if you're actually like playing in person as well, but it's not necessarily something that you're going to immediately notice when you're playing online.
as far as like online games go, because I during the pandemic, I actually moved my game online. I didn't require cameras, but I did require Discord. So people had to have the ability to speak on Discord, so we could actually communicate with voice and have the voice inflection at the table or at the virtual table, so that we could acknowledge when we heard somebody speak to us, and that was part of the social contract. There was, hey, if I ask you a question or if I say, hey, it's your turn, I need you to acknowledge me in some capacity. It could be just a dice roll, it could be a message, or yeah, I'm paying attention, what's up. If I get too many, yeah, I'm paying attention, what's ups, then I'm going to know that they're not paying attention. But that I digress. So if incentivizing your players doesn't work, maybe clear objectives might. And by that I mean the character. Like, so when I start my games, my session 0 is very much a, hey, tell me about your character. Tell me about their background. Tell me what you want to see your character accomplish. Give me your goals. Give me your character's life goals. And if their life goals change for whatever reason, let me know. So when I collect these life goals, I make clear objectives for those characters, and I kind of be like, all right, here's your path, that you're wanting your character to travel down. Here are the things they need to do to achieve their goals. And I don't give them all of the clues up front. I give them little pieces that lead them to the next puzzle piece that they can slot into their final goal. So, and by that, I'm kind of getting them involved at the very beginning, in how their character is going to develop over time, and where their character wants to go over time. So to that end, what, if any, clear objectives do you set for your players' characters to pursue? Can you provide me examples of a goal or challenge that you set for a player and their character? With this one, I'm going to start with Shadow.
Honestly, I don't. I let them do that, and then I'll help them get there. If they're playing the character, what do they want? What does their character want? And then I may tell them, well, in this particular kingdom, to get that, you're going to probably have to go here, and then give them maybe one or two minor clues, or this is how it's normally done. So you may want to go talk to this person or that person, or pick this fruit, or get those berries, or this herb, or whatever, and set them on that path. Or if it's a sci-fi game, something equivalent. You're going to need to talk to a mechanic or something like that. But I'm not going to set the goal. I'm going to tell them what it's going to take within what they might know that's going to be required to get the job done. Otherwise, it's up to them.
Okay. Sierra Bo, I'm going to move to you next on this one. Do you ever give clearly defined goals or objectives to your players or their characters?
I think that the game that we're in right now is more of a slow burn. So I wouldn't say we're there yet, but I have provided tools. I think that the players can use any way they want. I mean, the game that we're playing is more of a. Instead, it's more of like it's the Odyssey or a Xenophon. It's Anabaxis, right? The players need to escape, and where they go along the way is up to them. But I mean, if the players are interested in acquiring wealth, well, I've given them things that are valuable. If the players want power, I've given them things that they can use to acquire more power. But what I'm just trying to do is trying to create an environment, a big enough sandbox that they can literally do it. But I think Jaide made a really good point about that, because if the players don't know what their characters want, then I think that they might feel stuck, in any given game. So I think that, yeah, like Shadow said, it's incumbent upon the players to know what their characters want, or to at least think about what their characters want, so that they might progress, again, to act and not be acted upon. I think that's a big driving motivator for at least my interest in this show topic. I want to make the players want it. I want to make the players know what they want, and then try to find a way to accomplish their goals in the course of a RPG campaign. But I can't make them do it.
Sometimes they may even rail against that if they feel that you're trying to push them in literally any direction.
Well,
there
good.
are those players out there that kind of rail against that. If you tell them I want you to do this or something like that, you got to be very careful. There are those contrarians out there.
Well, I was talking to another guy in our group, and I try to touch base with players, throughout the course of the week or whatever. And this person said, I will take any adventure hook that the GM puts in front of me, whether it's subtle or not so subtle, because that's the game. The DM puts out a hook, I'm going to chomp on it. So, well, that makes it easy, right?
That's a good player who wants to keep playing.
It's, as a player, most of the games I've been in recently, even with Jaide, half the time I'm just happy to be there. I mean, I'm very simple that way, and I'm going to make a great background story or a great plan for my character. Oh yeah, your character died at 3rd level. Well,
So they died.
Shit. All right, there goes that plan. The old saying, men make plans, but gods laugh. So I don't push that.
Heard that before.
Really? Anyways, not taking that bait.
No plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Every
Yep.
boxer thinks it.
That I've heard.
Anyways.
Yeah, keep going.
So I don't really push on my players. It's like, so what is your player's, goal? Because I know as a player, you start off for apple and you might end up with orange because you change your mind midway through the building of your character or through the campaign as a whole. I mean, it's good to have plans, but they don't always come to, what's the word I'm looking for? Plans don't always work out. So yeah. I'm not hard-nosed on that one. I know, Jaide, you like talking about that, and I will give you at least an idea where I want my character to go. But in the back of my head, I'm like, well, if I roll really crappy or, a random hook shows up into the campaign, my plans are getting shot in the ass, and there's just nothing I can do about it. So I try to stay fairly loose in whatever plans I have, and because of that, I give that same thought process to my players. If I get a player like you, Jaide, for a 3.5 or Pathfinder that has his character mapped out from 1 to 100 chart sheets, I'm like, okay, I know where this guy's going. Or if I get another guy's like, I'm just going to take it as it comes, I understand where he's coming from. So I try to be flexible.
And Mar, how about you? Do you ever set clear objectives or goals for your players, or do you allow them to come up with these goals and you kind of make a path for them?
As I mentioned before, I'm not really big on long-term campaigns, so that's one of those things that kind of doesn't really come up. A huge thing is because the stuff that I've personally done, there was no long-term goal because it wasn't. But short-term stuff, sometimes having the players outside the game, watching certain episode of Star Trek so that they better understand the context of a certain thing you put in the game, that can be useful to playing the game. I mean, obviously that's something specific to IP-based settings and stuff, but that is actually one thing that I have actually done, though. It's like it's telling someone, they say, yes, we're going to do this, but it's better if you look up that ahead of time so that you remember what it is and don't get confused. Like in character stuff, like very simple stuff really is honestly this is just, but like I said, like I'm not really into like creating like expansive campaigns. I've played it though. I've just never created one.
Horsey. Sorry.
All right. So, as far as clear objectives, when I ask my players at session 0, hey, give me your goals. Like, what do you want your character to accomplish in this game? I've already laid out kind of my goals for the game, my kind of plans that I'm willing to share, the first intros to get them into the seat. But after that, I'm like, hey, given what you know about the world and everything you have read or I have told you, what kind of characters are you wanting to create? What goals do they have, if any? And I will work those into the grand story that is about to unfold. Just work with me on this and let's see where this goes. Because I do have a villain that I like I said in previous streams, I have my villain designed. Like, I know what my villain wants. I know what they need to do to achieve their goal. But I don't know what the players are going to do. I don't know how the players are going to interact with those, the goals of my villain. They may align with the goals of my villain. I don't know yet until the game starts and until the game gets rolling. So having those clear objectives of what the players want to accomplish with their characters gives me direction of where the campaign goes from session to session. It might be player A's turn to shine, so they're pursuing one of their goals in this session. However, next session, I might wrap up player A's goal or miniature goal or puzzle piece that they get, and I move on to player C's goal because C's goal is closely aligned to A's goal, so I'm going to move in that direction next. And where it goes from there is all based on what the players told me they would like to see or accomplish within the game. So,
Jade, let me ask you a question about that. Because
sure.
I was just listening to that, and I really like that. But I was wondering, do you have a particular game style that you think that this matches better with? I mean, are you playing? Would you say that your game is like more cinematic? Is it more thematic? I mean, what's like? Because the game I'm running is more cinematic, right? It's like a movie. And when I watch Die Hard, I don't necessarily know what John McClane's motivation is. So I'm just curious, because surviving the night. I'm just kind of curious to know how what you're saying meshes in with the overall theme of your game.
So my general theme of game is the 0 to hero to god game. So the characters, they start out as nobodies, like little farmers from some podunk village near the big city or within a big country. So they might have small goals to begin with. Once they accomplish those goals, they move on to bigger goals and better goals and more goals. Generally speaking, though, my games are grand or epic in the nature of not just levels, but in the weight of consequences to actions.
Right.
So I typically like that grand, larger than life feel for my games, and that's typically the path I strive to put my players onto in some capacity. Some of them go running down that path heedless of the warnings entirely. They just barreling down that path as fast as they can until they meet the immovable object as the unstoppable force. But generally speaking, like I said, yeah, it's very cinematic. It's very grandiose. By the end of many of my games, there have been player characters who have ascended to quasi godhood of some capacity or another.
Or sainthood.
So that's
Okay,
or
so let me
sainthood.
ask you another question. This is more of a meta question because I like where this is going. And since I have not, I feel like such an outsider.
Mhm.
My ideas of role playing games are not the same as, obviously not the typical. So I want to ask, do you think that this is the kind of game then that most players want to play now? Because I'm thinking, like, if I was playing the X-Files, if I was running an X-Files game by tabletop, there's not really a way for Mulder and Scully to become demigods.
Sure.
Well,
They could become supervisors of their sector. They could
Yeah,
become
what kind of games do people play nowadays? Because I mean, maybe I'm just so out in left field, but I'm having a hard time keeping players' attention because the games that I'm playing are not the games that the game I want to run is not the game people want to play. That's the question.
Well, can I jump on this really quick?
Please,
Sure.
I'm interested. Everyone here is a more experienced DM, GM, keeper, player, than I.
And I appreciate that. Honestly, with my RPG DM being paid to be it, I just kind of fell into it, and I was lucked out that way. But it depends on the crowd, depends on your table. Some people like, as Shadow put it, hour fantasy. I personally hate hour fantasy. I don't like the concept of that. But some people are there for the fantasy. Some people are there for the sci-fi. Some people are there for whatever tickles their particular fancy. I mean, there's a billion and one different RPGs out there. Who brought up Die Hard?
Me.
Die Hard. I'm pretty sure if you look hard enough, you can find a Die Hard ripoff. I mean, there's already an Alien one and a bunch of other RPGs. If you want that cinematic RPG situation that you game, then you need, and this is not a jab at any of those players because I very well could have been one of those players at one point. Then you need to find people that share that interest with you. Because if they don't, you're just spinning your wheels for nothing, and so are they.
Right.
And I'm not going to be a dick to your players, but if there's not some kind of hook, line, and sinker, then you're wasting your time and they're wasting their time. If you just want to do a half an hour or an hour social hour, you can do that a whole lot easier without the headache and the aspirin.
Right. No, and that's not, again, I mean, I don't want to be like that guy, but I do want to run a fairly immersive, it doesn't need to be Lux Radio Theater, but I want to have a game where the players are, becoming the characters that they play, right? And that happens by playing the kind of character you want and the kind of campaign that you want. And if this game, I mean, if your game is a failure to launch, then how many sessions are going to happen before you notice that?
You could be in it for 2 months before it pops its ugly head up. It just pops up whenever it pops up. Sorry.
Bo.
Now, Shadow, you had something?
Yeah. Bo, run the game you want to run.
No. I get that, but I also want to keep the players
just like Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come.
Sure.
Advertise the game you want to run. Tell people about the game you want to run, and the people who are truly interested in playing that game are the people that you want. People who just show up because it's the only game in town.
I don't want to hijack the whole show, but I mean, I think that what maybe, I don't know if we've gotten there yet, but I think there's a point when in terms of player engagement that players self-select, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You how many times have you gone to a party and found out this ain't my crowd? Okay. You get there, you look around, you're like, I probably don't have anything in common with any of these people for whatever reason. We all have our tastes and things we like and the ability to size up a room, I hope.
Yeah.
But
that's why me and Shadow are kind of a ride or die.
With you guys have heard me talk about my nautical game that I'm working on. There have been people who keep asking me about the game. Okay. One of the reasons why I haven't started running it is because I'm waiting for the right people to hit me up and go, I want to be in that game. That sounds like a freaking great game. When are you gonna run it? When are you gonna run it? I want to keep hearing that so that I can sort of have them help me vet the people that I want into the game. But at the end of the day, I want to run the game that I want to run, a game that I would love to be in. But because no one else is running that game, I'm gonna run it. And that way, at the end of the day, I'll know that I ran a game that I myself would have killed to be in. And maybe someday someone will be so inspired from the game that I ran that they'll want to run something similar enough that I'm going to want to be in that game just as much as they wanted to be in my game.
So beyond clearly defined goals, either from the players or given to the players, there are things you can do to encourage roleplay, but this is kind of a departure from them acting on their own. And it's more of a them. Ooh, hold on.
I got to.
Yeah, okay. It's Bo. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So
go to the TV when you're younger. For those who are old enough to remember the radio, and you got something in your hand, and the TV starts. Is there a magnet? No, it's not a magnet. I swear. Sorry.
But anyway, so besides the clearly defined goals, you can encourage your players to role play through NPC interactions, or even player character interactions. But you can also use environmental methods to kind of force them into a role play with what's going on around them. To do this, it's more of them being acted upon rather than them taking the initiative, unless you have the player's interests. So, for example, I know that with some of my players, they have a certain interest within, let's say, art. So I might put something in the environment. They stumble upon a room filled with half-completed sculptures. I know the artist within the player is going to pipe up to this because that's something they love. They have an interest in. Their character may or may not have the same interest. I don't know until I've put this, before them. So by knowing the player, I can coax a little bit of role play out of them by putting stuff into the scene or NPCs into the scene that they will naturally want to partake in or to interact with. So what do you do to encourage role play? By which I mean encouraging players to stay specifically in character, especially when speaking. Can you give me any examples of this when you're answering this? So, Mara, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you do to encourage role play among your players?
This is an interesting one, because there's quite a lot of things you can do here. It's trying to have a conversation, this character and your character. It's a lot of people don't really want to try doing the whole acting out with the character thing, but simply not even necessarily trying to imagine how your character would say things, just saying things that your character is thinking or feeling or whatever is a good starting point at the very least.
No.
Even if it
I'm sorry. I think it's a bad idea to tell them what they're thinking or feeling unless it's an artificial imposed upon you.
The player, to have the player tell you what they're thinking.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misread that.
I mean, because it's I was making a distinction between having the player actually act out how their character thinks and feels and simply telling you how their character thinks and feels.
I think that's a good start. Is, hey, here's what's going on in the scene. Tell me what you as the player are thinking, and tell me what you think your character is thinking. And try to figure out where the two align. I think that's a good way to get, especially inexperienced players, into role playing. Start by tell me what it is you're thinking in this moment about what is going on.
I mean, I know some people who are cool and like the idea of, acting out a story, the whole choose your own adventure thing, but multiplayer, that kind of logic. They just aren't really into the whole actually trying to role play in the sense of thespian acting kind of playing a character.
I don't know very many DMs that require that level of it, and if they do,
I know.
There are some.
I'm just using that.
I mean, I'm sure there are.
I'm just using that as this, but not that sort of logic. It's because so some people will actually try to encourage people to, at the very least, try to phrase everything in character. Having it be first person, it's hello Betty, I am Bob, and I am here to talk to you about the missing horses. Actually, wanting people to even if they're not doing funny voices, but I actually do the dialogue that way, even it versus just doing the Cliff Notes version of it.
Okay. So let's see. I started with Mar on that one, right? Conall, how about you on this one next? How do you encourage your players to role play and get into character and be in the moment for the game?
I will, once again, depends on who I'm DMing for, of course. The
average player.
The average player. Let's say I'm doing it for kids. Let's say, no, it's just for kids. I will do funny voices. I will make the NPC sound like anything I need my NPC to sound like to grab their attention. Monkey see, monkey do. If I do it and one of the kids latches onto the thoughts, maybe I want my character to sound like this or do that, they will normally start getting into the habit of it. When I was in your campaign, and I was doing Higgins and Mad. Higgins was a very classical, British type personality, a very a dude type personality, where Mad was Mel Gibson on meth. Let's knock this out. Was it Lethal Weapons? I can't remember the name, but yeah, he was that type of character. So doing the dynamic of the two different characters in my head, especially where there was one or two scenarios where I had to play both at the same time, it's just, you got to, even with people who are more comfortable with art playing or not, you just have to get in the right head mode. You have to talk to, especially younger players, and say, you have to relax. You have to have fun with this. You have to be in the right headspace, because the moment you do something, or the moment one of the kids does something, he's like, I want to play whatever, and he's talking rah 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 rah, and the kid next to him laugh. I gotta tell Timmy, please do not laugh at Josh. He's trying to get in character. He's trying to stay interested in not interested. He's trying to be part of the game.
Okay, fair. So sometimes you have to discourage the some of the other players a little bit to not lose some players. I too have seen that where there are some players who are new to role playing, and they don't have much assuredness in of themselves, not to mention their characters. And I've had to actually put players who overshadow or purposely overshadow or try to tell that player, here's how you play the character, here's how you do this, here's how you do that. I've had to tell those kind of players, hey, stop, you're not the one who made that character. They are. Let them play their character. I've had to have those moments with certain players. So, what about you, Shadow? What do you do to encourage role play with your players? I imagine you don't have to do a lot anymore.
No, and we already had some really good answers, but believe it or not, this is one that Bo reminded me of a couple of times in the past couple of games we've played. It's just remind the players, stay in character, first person. If you can't do first person, do third person. You yourself aren't here anymore. It's the player. I just want to hear. It's the character. I just want to hear what the character is doing in their own voice. You don't have to use a silly voice. Ask Bo. I never do that. And sometimes it may be hard to tell that that's what I'm doing, but everything I say is literally coming out of my character's mouth, word for word. I may even say, like we used to say, out of character. And as soon as you say that, then you know that everything else that's happening is, probably not even game related. But just remind them, first person, just speak as if you were the character. And if you can't, then speak as if you were, moving the marionette, the puppet, the miniature, whatever, and just tell me that way. Mind you, first person is superior, third person is acceptable, everything else is not really role playing.
Fair point. All right, Bo, to you. What are you doing to encourage role play at your table with your players, especially the ones who are being those wallflower types?
Well, I'm not subtle when it comes to expectations. Again, expectations are not demands. But just especially with an experienced table, if I've got guys at my table that have been around the block, I've been playing since Red Box, maybe playing since Gray Box, then it's okay to say, yeah, can you do it in character? Is this in character? And just encourage role play. And I try to encourage role play in my games. And this is actually something I learned from Abe a couple weeks ago. He did a video on including all of the senses in your descriptions as a GM. And so I said, look, there's a low mist hanging from the floor. You see condensation on the walls. There is the, acrid smell of smoke in the room. To try to just build an immersion, because I think if I do that, it encourages that kind of role play, encourages the players to interact. And then if that doesn't work, then like Shadow said, just tell them, say, these are my minimum interactions. And I don't have to do, again, like I was saying, this does not have to be the Columbia Broadcasting station's, radio show of the week. But I do want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to have as much of an immersive and fun experience as possible. And so that comes from my involvement. When I run a game, I play the NPCs in first person. I talk for whether it's somebody who's going to sell you a falafel on the corner, or whether it's the planetary governor. I really try to make a little effort to be that person. And I think that my hope is that by doing that, it encourages other players to participate too. Again, it doesn't need to be a silly voice. There are no professional voice actors at my table, but it's, in that respect, role-playing is a game of make-believe, right? This is a game of make-believe with rules. And the rules are ways of making decisions in the game and progressing the game that are not arbitrary, right? I keep the game fair by applying rules. I encourage role-playing by reminding people that, yeah, this is a game of make-believe. You've become the Sheriff of Nottingham. You've become Agent Mulder or Agent Scully. And I hope that by doing that, that we can create an environment so that, later in the week, Shadow can say, man, that was fun. That robot almost bit my character in half, man. I can't wait to do that again. Man, and those microwave guns that we got, man, those make those things just explode like jelly. Can't wait till we get a ship and go flying across the universe. And that's how I know I've arrived as a GM, right? When I can encourage that kind of role playing that elicits that kind of response later in the week, so that players want to come back and do it again, not out of some kind of sense of obligation, but because there's almost nothing that they would rather do on a Friday night.
Okay. So, thinking about player engagement, one of the other things that I particularly like to see at my table is player-to-player interactions. And these are, when the players take it upon themselves to investigate, and talk with their fellow players in character. And in that, I mean, so actually this past weekend, I was at a game as a player, and it was, I think, 3 or 4 of us talking about the next step of the plan, the next step of our mission as characters. And we talked in character the entire time and developed plans based on what our characters knew about the mission and about each other and about what would motivate our characters or each other towards action. And so to me, I think player-to-player interaction is just as important as game master to player interactions. But I mean, game master to player interactions is quite literally 80% of the game. It's the monsters, the NPCs, the environment, the dice rolls. It's all of that stuff. The other 20% is player participation and player interaction. I highly encourage, actually, I would like to actually see more player interaction amongst each other, upwards of about 40% of the game being player to player interactions. Not just, would that mean I'm just sitting there as a game master waiting for them to act upon me? Yes, that would. And that would take some burden off of my mind. Just having to come up with the encounters and the social aspects of the game. Yeah, I'd be down for that. Yeah, you guys, push the game forward for me, and I'll introduce conflict as it arises. So
I'm actually really glad you brought that topic up, because I was actually thinking about that the other day, and I was talking to some of the other players. Think about how much time a player will invest in a backstory, right? My character is the third son of a deposed minor lord, and I want to go on this crusade and this quest to restore my family throne. But the players never talk to each other about that, right? Even in a modern game, if you watch a movie like Hurt Locker or something, think about how the characters communicate with each other, even in action. Hey, cover me. Hey, I'm reloading. Hey, I'm moving. Communication is a big part, but I don't know if it's because of the type of people that RPGs tend to attract, if we're just geeky introverts by nature. But like you, Jade, I would love if I just sat back as the GM and watched players talk about what their home village was like, and about how they've got to go and get the gem of the Goblin King so that they can restore their family honor. As the GM, I want to hear that, because as the GM, we talked about, I give my players 5 points, which in GURPS is like a whole skill for a good background. If you come up with a good background, that's not nothing. That's like maybe 2 or 3% of your total character's points. So yeah, not only come up with the background, but make it actually part of your character as the game progresses.
Go ahead, Conall.
I have I mean, it's just me. It's just me. Every time I do a background character for a background for my characters, it doesn't survive birth. But if I make a character where I slightly put together where okay, this is the direction I'm going, this is what the main idea is, they tend to last the entire campaign. If I'm like, here, Jade, here's a 3-page backstory page. Congratulations, he died first game out. I'm like, screw that noise. I'll just make up, And it's very important for you to, and I'm not saying having a background is a horrible idea. It's a good idea where your character knows where your character came from, his goals and stuff like that. I completely
Not
agree.
necessary though.
But I think it's just, I think it's my curse. I think it's just me personally. Here's a page, 3-page. Here's a dossier, whatever. My character. Oh wait, he telling me he didn't survive. He died in the cradle. Son of a bitch. I'm just gonna play Bob. What's Bob about? I don't know. Let's find out.
There's this old meme that got passed around Twitter a year or so ago about a guy who. He's a DM. He's like, hey, here's the players who are playing in my game. Guess which one of them died in the first session? And there's this thing. It's like there's this picture where the text is so small you can't read any of it. And like there's this one guy who posted that has like a multiple page backstory, and then there's like all of the other players' backstories put together that take up less than 1 page.
I want to ask a question about that though. Is this an example of causation? Because
I genuinely don't know.
The player that creates the 3-page backstory, is he the more proactive player? Is he the one that runs headlong, waving his sword to save the day? Is this the type of? And I'm just wondering if that's a fact or if it's something.
That example I gave from Twitter is something where all I know is a person posted a picture and made a comment about it. All that is literally the entirety of what I know about that one.
It was Jade's campaign years ago. I did actually a 3-page background for. I've had other DMs. Scott actually kind of asked me to do one. It wasn't 3 pages. I think it was a page and a half, and it's sort of like Star Trek. If you at least know the player, at least know the character's first name, he survives for at least one more episode. The moment you know his backstory and he has kids, sorry, he died. Transporter dysfunction. Screw that.
2 weeks from retirement.
Yeah, I don't know the causation thing. And I know other people that spend time on it and they have a character that survives the whole 1 to 15, 1 to 20. It's just me. I realize that. I
think that has more to do with decisions and consequences therein, which is a different topic entirely.
I mean, the one Hyperborea campaign I was in, we had a group where the person who was the GM was always interested in seeing new faces, so we'd have people just like pop in for a session and maybe stick around, maybe not. Well, some of them were people who the way they played the game was just so overly aggressive that their characters practically committed. Well, it's like the Leroy Jenkins meme.
Yep.
In one of the games, we ended up having a explosion of a trap that killed half the party because the guy is just like, oh, hey, look, there's a room with loot in it. Let me just shove everything into my pockets. And one of the things he shoved into his pocket was an exploding skull.
Oh, nice.
Somehow he didn't die.
Hey, real quick, I wanted to address something Scott said. A couple of things. As for me, my backgrounds tend to be 6 to 10 pages. How old is this character? Traditionally we run very young characters. For Bo's game, my backstory is precisely one paragraph that has told me everything I'm ever going to need to know about my character. Mind you, he's 22 years old. It's really simple, and I will never need to write anything on the backstory. Now, what's happened since then? Obviously, lots of things have happened, but the character is still the same, more or less, person because, we've only run through maybe a month of gameplay, game time. So he's still the same guy. He's seen a lot of stuff, but deep down, he's still kind of the same guy with the same hopes and dreams. If you asked me for 3 pages of backstory, I wouldn't be able to give them to you. It's way too much, and to me, it seems like it imposes quite a bit on the GM. Unless you're, other games, Traveler, for example, your character's, 42 years old and done, 4-5 terms of, active military duty, that sort of thing. Yeah, well then maybe. But if you're running the typical 0 to hero kind of character, I really don't get it. I don't see
So
how you would have that
I can speak to the 6-page character backstory because that was written for, I believe, my game years ago. The character was well thought out. The character had a lot going on in his personal life, and it came into play in the game itself because I was able to pull from different pages from the different scenes that the player or that Scott wrote for this character. I was able to pull some of those scenes into the game as kind of like callbacks to that character,
Right.
Or to be able to advance the game in a certain direction because I had those scenes to work with and the foes therein.
I was able to actually do some of that with my backstory. I gave Bo plenty to work with. Maybe it's because they were, very concise sentences, or because I made it a very sort of familiar story of, like why a young man would join the service. And, his background was pretty generic, but his life before that was pretty generic. He was a rancher. He lived on a planet where they raised some sort of, beasts, whether they be beasts of burden or some sort of cattle. There isn't really a lot, to put in there. But I did give, some intense motivation of why the character is now no longer there and doing these other things. I've never really had anybody give me that much of a backstory, and when they do, it's always seemed like they're trying to get, freebies.
Right.
Yes, Conall.
I have often thought about playing a barbarian. The only system I ever played a barbarian in so far is 5th edition, which is amazing. I think I would have had a great time in a Pathfinder or 3.5. I've just never played a barbarian. The whole they can't read is always just kind of, or write is always kind of chapped my ass. But I've thought about jokingly, well, I want a background on your character. I just get a crayon and say my name is whatever, with a grape, or get some paint or whatever, where it looks like blood, and just smack it on the paper and hand it to the DM.
So you don't want to stray too far, then, is what you're saying, right?
I will put the work in. Jaide will verify this. If it comes to the game, I will put the work in. But when it comes to the background, I'm always, and if I'm playing a barbarian, you're getting either a really, barbarians are dumb. Barbarians can't read. Barbarians are right. You're going to get, grr and a bloody handprint on paper. I'm just going to turn that in.
Right.
He has done this in character. He's done this. No. So as far as like the social interactions between players go, between trading resources, making alliances with one another, like, yeah, I've got your back, or negotiating tactics. This can happen at the table or even away from the table. I've actually encouraged some of my players to talk amongst themselves outside of session, away from the table, and be like, hey, if you guys want to, develop, teamwork or little squads of what you're doing, like, go for it. I'm not going to dissuade you. Just keep me in the loop.
Your wife's normally been ahead of those charges.
In a way, yeah. And she does engage in player interactions, and it's something I really encourage, because she brings out other players' ability to role play by forcing the interaction with them. And it's not like so far as my character goes to this character and slaps him in the head. No, she looks at them and like, hey, stop being dumb. She's talking in character and she's trying to get a reaction out of the player in character. And this kind of leads to my next point on this, and that is teamwork. When and this is kind of a callback to both incentives and clear objectives. I often will allow players to come up with teamwork mechanics between themselves for the game that we're playing. And it requires both of them to be able to pull it off. One player might get the idea, oh yeah, if we can work together as a team, like I'm a big half orc, and I'm working with the halfling, I'm going to pick up the halfling and I'm going to chuck him across the room. And then
Very cool.
Yeah, I was about to say.
That's the common one, right?
We not talking about the fastball special around
right, like that's the common trope is the orc throwing the halfling across the room as a charge. There's no real. Some games have made mechanics for this, but not all games have mechanics for something like that. And I will encourage, if my player is going to take the initiative to not just talk to themselves, at the table, but away from the table about the game and develop, ideas about the game and where they're wanting their characters to go, I am not going to dissuade this because it's only going to bring more to the game. So if they want to come up with a mechanic for what they want to do, I will help them with it. I will not just encourage it. I will help them with the numbers or the mechanics that are involved in it. Like, okay, well, if you want to do this, you're going to need this ability and this ability. Right. These are both able to be learned. Go do it. Like I full on encourage this. After a certain level, you'll attain it. That's fine. Like you will have done this enough that you just attain this ability, outside of, normal leveling. Like that's fine with me. So this is a kind of a double hitter. It's actually a triple threat. I'm incentivizing the players to do things, with their characters. I'm incentivizing them by, them interacting with each other, but I'm also saying, here's your clear objective and goal. Go get it. So along, what's that?
Continue. I'm sorry.
So along these lines of player interactions, do you create or encourage this creation of teamwork mechanics? Even if the game doesn't normally support these mechanics or don't have rules that govern it, do you encourage this or provide options for this? I'm going to start with Mar on this one.
Right. For long-term plan things, having characters like, hey, this is what I want my character to do eventually. Especially if it's a game that has stuff like, domain play, because honestly, that's not really my thing, but some players really like that. And, it's like, okay, this is what I want my character to be able to do when we shift to domain play. So how am I going to go about getting that? That's definitely one of those like personal goal things. Like a character would have a mission aside from the obvious stuff that they're doing.
Yes, Conall?
I'm waiting for him to stop, but the gnome are thrown for detecting traps. He thinks that's funny. I in somebody's campaign years ago used that theory on another player to see if the checkered floor was trapped. And the other player did not enjoy it, but we found out the black ones were safe to step on.
Rude.
I totally said I pushed him. And the DM's like, are you serious? And I'm like, why not? Sure. Yeah, my character pushed him. Do a strength check. All right. such and person do a strength check. Oh, okay. Conall, you win. What do? I shove him in front of me. Okay. As we're waiting for.
So the idea here, because I remember the session. The floor was trapped in a pattern, but they didn't know the pattern because they didn't stop for, I think, the 5 minutes required to observe something in one of the rooms that was leading up to this point. And they're like, you know what? Let's just brute force this thing. And well, that's what Conall did. Is he brute forced it with another player.
I mean, we all survived.
Mostly.
I was playing a tiefling rogue. I mean, it was, in theory, in character.
What my character would do. Oh.
Wait, so in theory for your character is betray the party at the first opportunity?
No, just betray this one guy because he was an asshole. The character was an asshole to my character, not the person.
I disbelieve the paladin. Yeah.
So I do have a question from Elle, but I will get to it after everyone's had a chance to answer about teamwork mechanics. Shadow, do you encourage teamwork mechanics or teamwork ability or the ability for players to create their own kind of abilities within the game?
I will encourage it once they've discovered it for themselves. I'm not there to hold their hand. They need to make some crucial and life-changing mistakes to learn these things. Their characters aren't, at first level or what have you, going to just walk into the first, combat situation and already know this. They need to learn from their mistakes. And if they die, make them a new character. We're just starting out. Now, if I'm playing with youngsters, which I've done a few times recently, I'll kind of help them out a little, just because I do want them to enjoy the game and continue playing. And if they can learn some of those things from me, then they'll go on with their games amongst their peers. And oh, where'd you learn that? That kind of thing. A little way to impart a little wisdom with the youngsters. But most of the people I play, they already know all this stuff or have a good idea. Now, if they come up with something and I'm legitimately impressed, I'm going to let them know that, wow, that was pretty cool. You might want to try that again from time to time, but don't make a big thing out of it and try to milk it every single time, because eventually it's going to get boring. It's going to get old. And eventually, if they keep doing it too much, everybody who's ever heard of them is going to be ready for it.
Fair point.
Okay, that reminds me of one other. I forgot something earlier. It's like I have actually, in a lot of cases, seen people just like come up with it's like, oh well, okay, doing X and Y at the same time worked well, so we'll do that again. And I mean, players just seem to find that rewarding in and of its own right. It's kind of like a making your own fun sort of thing. So it's more, I find it more like a matter of like not discouraging that and more like, oh, okay, that's happening. Go. Cool.
So, Bo, how about you? Do you encourage your players to not just, interact with each other as players or even as characters, but do you also incentivize them with the ability to come up with teamwork ideas or teamwork strategies?
Well, what I did when because this is a matter of the players not only learning a new game, they're learning the new system, right? Mm-hmm. And when after the first or second combat session, I made copies of all of the advanced maneuvers that the players could do in combat, and sent them to all of the players via Discord and said, hey, look at all these cool things you can do. You can, for example, burn a turn aiming, or if you're in melee, you can do an all-out attack, or you can do like a parry. Fortunately, none of my players are really melee oriented, but and again, this is what Shadow's an allusion to what he was saying. I have expectations of players based on their background. If I have, let's look at two classic examples for a moment. Let's look at the Fellowship of the Ring at the Prancing Pony, right? They just started their adventure. They just met Strider for the first time. They're going to go to Weathertop. They're at the hill, right? And they're going to screw everything up because they're new. Now, let's look, for example, like the fire team in Predator, when they're doing their insertion via Huey, and Little Richard's playing Long Tall Sally, and they're gearing up, they're jocking up, they're checking all their gear. They're ready. These guys they're wired. They train together. Now, the players, if I'm running the first game, I have different expectations of the players than if I'm running the second game. If I'm running a squad of Green Berets and they're going to go through, they're going to kick ass, they're going to move 2 by 2 and leapfrog and throw smoke and kick down the door and clear their corners and have an interlocking field of fire and mow everybody down, then yeah, I expect them to act like that. And fortunately, I have rules. There are rules in the game that will, the mechanics that will allow for those things, Jade. But
Awesome.
so I guess again, it comes down to players' expectations and a player's desire to run the mechanics, and a player's desires to how they're going to play the party. If they're going to shoot, move, communicate, it could be a D&D game. Look at the difference between running like an MMO, right? Guys are playing like World of Warcraft. They do that, right? They're like, okay, you're the brick, you're going to screen, I'm going to hang back, I'm going to throw magic missiles or fireballs or whatever. The healer's over here. And I hate optimized parties, because to me, optimized parties are just the party min-maxing, and I hate min-maxing, so why wouldn't I hate a party min-maxing?
Also, min-maxing as a group means telling other players what role they need to fill, because you already filled this role.
Party optimization. Can't stand it. Anyway, that's a different show. But to get back to the question, yeah, I not only do I allow it and I encourage it, but I've got rules for it. You know, I already passed out the combat cards.
Okay. So
for a second, I thought you were going to say I've already passed out the safety cards. I'm like, what? Sorry,
no safety cards here.
I mean, I'm personally a fan of using cards, lots and lots of cards, but mostly to write things down.
Well, no, but I mean, if your game has like Arduin, you know, and add cards for magic items, or if you can put down like a GM screen, if I can make a cheat sheet for the characters that has, okay, look, this is the rules for dropping prone and shooting. People do that, right? Or this is the rules for, I don't know, or for throwing a melee weapon. If I can make that as a little cheat sheet, like a guy like, okay, man, I want to make a character who's a thief who throws darts that have sleep poison on them. Okay, well, here are the rules for throwing darts. And, you know, you can keep that next to your character sheet, make a little cheat sheet for it. And because it not only encourages the players to do things like that, but it speeds the game up inevitably, right? Maintains immersion, maintains flow. And I'm about that. So, yeah, Jade, yes, definitely yes.
Awesome. So the final thing I want to kind of bring up tonight, and this is kind of counter to the topic, but still adjacent to the topic, and that is the idea of random events. Now, these random events, are like wandering monsters. They can be, environmental effects, earthquakes or storms or whatever the case might be. These things are elements that we as game masters use that kind of put onus onto the player to make decisions. This is them being acted upon. But these random events can also draw out role play opportunities for players. And they don't always have to be combat either. They can be, like I said, environmental effects. Like if I want my players to hunker down, for safety, they're going to be able to find a cave for safety during a storm. I'm not going to be so cruel that they're going to have to figure out, how to, take, or tie themselves to trees and hope the tree doesn't get uprooted. They're like, If I
Why
know
not?
that I'm going to be throwing, I mean, they could if they wanted to, but
I mean,
if I
nobody ever
know,
does that.
You might want to retract that.
there are people who have tried to save themselves by tying themselves onto the
No, what I mean,
leeward side of
obviously
trees.
they've done that, but nobody has that story from a game that I know of.
No,
It's
no.
always they luckily find shelter. No, make them suck it up and spend the night in the rain.
Last Friday,
Well, in the rain, yes, but if they see the storm clouds out at sea and they know they're on a sea border that gets hit by hurricanes pretty frequently during certain seasons of the year, they know where the shelter points are. They know they're going to have to probably retreat to shelter at some point during their missions out in the bush. So when they see the storm wall coming in across the ocean, that's their warning. If they don't take that seriously, then those characters die and we make new characters, because hurricanes are nothing to screw around with. But if my players know that there's safety within the rocks, like 100 meters from the beach, they're going to go seek shelter at those rocks, or in a cave system nearby to survive the storm. And that's going to put them in a situation like, oh, well, I guess we bed down for the night and do literally nothing else. Well, why do you have to do nothing else? Like, why aren't there campfire stories? Why aren't you as the players interacting with one another? I've presented you this opportunity. Please take it. So do you ever use these kind of random events to put the onerous back onto the players to make the decision whether or not they're going to role play? Is what I'm asking. Conall, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I want to answer the last question first.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Did I not get to you on that?
No, you
Oh, I'm sorry.
jumped the shark on me. Last question is, what was?
It was about teamwork mechanics.
I've said this on Table Breakers. I've said this on other people's show. I'm pretty sure I've said it on this one. I like the Coulson effect from Avengers.
Oh, yeah. You're going to kill an NPC?
Oh, yeah. Or their sister.
All of them.
All of them.
Brutally.
There's going to be kidnapping. There's going to be murder. There's going to be something that
That's what
drags.
they're for.
That brings the PCs together. The moment you get that bonding, okay, the combat stuff will organically come along naturally as they get, okay, well, if you have a shield and you have a shield and I stand in the middle with a spear, you got two balls in a cock for damage. This is Dag here / SCA stuff. This is nothing new.
I mean, that's standard shield and spear practice, yes.
Right. And if they get to that point, if they understand where this is going, I think as players, they actually learn how to work together. And I don't have this problem with kids. I really don't. It's adults that are, no, man, I'm too cool to talk in character to the person next to me. Fuck, kids, though? Kids are like, well, my character's doing this. Can I talk to him and my character? Go for it. It's amazing. It's adults that I have the most problem with this one. But no, I prefer to do the Coulson effect, where I don't know if it's the second game in or the third game in, but we're that moment where they're not really working together, but they kind of are. You do something. You drive that stake home. One of them gets, it's sold into slavery, as Chat was talking about earlier, and the rest of the party's got to go save them. Or something. And it tends to bring the party together. I know that sounds horrible, but it works from my experience. And the second one is for random encounters to see what kind of party I have. Because once you realize the psychological aspect of what kind of character, do you have RPGers or do you have murder hobos, or do you have something in between? Is first or second level, I'll have them go saving something a town over, or taking care of a goblin village where half of the goblins are gone, because you can kill a party at second level with too many goblins. I've seen it done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So but I'll have like a gray render. A gray render is a true neutral monster that lives in the forest, and all he does, or he or she, whatever, is eat plants. And I'll have the gray render kind of take notice of one of the players, and it will follow the player. Now, what the players do with the gray render is work the telling fact.
Right.
If they attack it, well, I got a bunch of murdering hobos. Okay, I know where this is going to go. If they try to shoo it away, it will go away. But it depends on if I have a druid or something in the party and how they handle it. That druid might not get a companion, but he might get a buddy that will stick around for the party with the first list, for a couple sessions, and it wanders off.
Right.
I reward them, I kind of reward them from not being murder hobos.
I feel like that, Conall. That's very clever.
It's, as I said earlier, it feels more half the time when I'm doing this for kids that I'm teaching than I'm actually DMing.
Right. No, but with the good animal that follows the party around for a session or two, that's not bad. And
for the weather thing, both of you and Jade and Shadow can hop on a short bus and take it to the bridge. This past Friday, we were playing Warhammer Fantasy. There is no fucks to give in Warhammer Fantasy. You wake up, you still might be dead. You wake up dead in the way this DM's running it. We're all camped underneath a tree because it was kind of raining, but there's no lightning. Next thing we know, a lightning hits the tree blows up. There's no, oh no, lightning hits the tree. No, the tree blows up, and we're waking up on fire.
Splinters. Yep, splinters are a thing.
Oh,
Splinters,
yeah.
Splinters even.
No.
Yeah.
Both of you hippies, people still do it.
So, Shadow, do you ever use random events to encourage players to, role play either, with themselves, amongst themselves, or even with what's going on with the random events? Do you ever, I guess, kind of force the interaction?
No.
Okay.
I will with NPCs, but with events, that's on them. They're going to do what they're going to do, and if they're not in the mood for that, because you got to understand, sometimes the same group will come back to the same table as more or less different people, depending on the week, the month, the year. They're going to change outside of the table, and if they come to my table and they're just not into it that night, I'm not going to force anything. If they want to role play, they will role play amongst themselves or with NPCs. But if they, like with Bo's game, it's on a Friday night. I know me personally, when I get there, I just want to shoot shit. Okay. But he'll let you know, I do a crap ton of role playing. Okay. Cause that's what's on the menu that night. But, I'm not running the game. If it was up to me, I'd probably be shooting half the players too. I just want to shoot.
More combat noted.
But I'm gonna try not to disrupt the game. My other friends at the table, they all have different things they want, and if they don't feel like role playing, the last thing I'm gonna do is try to force them to role play. If that's all they want to do is role play, I'm not going to interrupt a great role play session with bandits or the King's Guard storming into the place that they're hanging out and start roughing them up or something like that. I'm gonna read the room, see what they want, and maybe even say, what's up? What do you feel like doing tonight, guys? And if a majority of them just they just want to get into some combat, then I'll see what I can do to help them out. But if they're all like chill and they're like, oh yeah, we never finished these plans from last week, and they're all like, yeah, because sometimes players are just as excited to role play amongst themselves or with the NPCs than they are for combat. Just got to read the room when they get to your table and try to get a feel for what they want to make a great game. Because I'm running a sandbox, I'm not running a railroad, so I don't give a shit where it goes as long as it comes back next week.
Right. Right.
Oh, and one last thing. Don't let Bo fool you. He is one of the best GMs I've ever played with. When it comes to voices and
Understand,
story
but
ideas.
I want to learn this stuff. I'm sitting at the feet of some very
I've been doing this for,
Wait.
I've been doing
Did I
this
just
for
hear a
40 some odd years, and I'm still learning from this guy.
exactly.
So, if you guys
That's
do
why
not
I
subscribe,
watch the
go
show.
hit up his channel. Make up fake accounts and subscribe some more. I'm kidding. Don't do that. That's awful.
Did I just hear a ding? Bribe the DM go up a level?
Jade,
I think so.
I
Yes.
wonder, with some of these questions, if you've been like literally reading my mind, because I was thinking yesterday, the day before, I was thinking about gaming, running a game, and I don't want to spur my players to role play, but I want to spur them to be proactive. And sometimes when we're playing, it's like this, right? We're playing via Discord, so you get, this much of my face, right? And we're rolling either via virtual or on the real dice. And if you see me do this, that means it's your turn. And so I was thinking, I can't make them role play, but what if I have random events that spur them to action? And what if they are? Well, I'll get to you, Conall. I want to develop this point first. And what if those random events are progressively more serious? Okay, I'm going to name a D&D example. If I was playing AD&D, first edition or second edition, my example would be, there's a ghoul in the graveyard. You don't kill. Your party passes it. Next time, there's 2 ghouls in the graveyard, right? I want to do things that it's like my kids. If my kids ignore me and I take something away and that doesn't work, I'll keep taking things away until I find something that does motivate them. If I was playing first or second edition D&D, I think those 2 things would be rust monsters and wights. I'll take their stuff and then I'll take their levels. They're going to act because I will pit them where it hurts. What hurts players? Take their treasure, take their levels.
Wait. That makes me think Kai's not here because I can see the mushroom cloud coming off from my window. Don't take my stuff.
Oh, I'll take your stuff and I'll take your levels. I know that Shadow hates taxes, so when the King Sheriff comes and takes 20% of their loot, and then in the next fight, the Rust Monster comes and takes all their non-magic stuff instantly, and all their magic stuff gets a save or disintegrate. And then the whites come and put them back down to around, first or second level. Maybe they'll be more proactive. Are we all? Anyway, I'm saying, Jade, I think that you've been reading my mind.
Well, since I'm in your game, and I know kind of what you're talking about and what spurred this on, you missed my comments earlier. Sometimes it's not the game, it's the player. Okay.
Oh, sure. No, I agree with you. And this is not about me. This is about us.
Don't think you need to go so far out of your way. If they keep coming, eventually they'll to the table.
This is Shadow telling me not to take his stuff. Don't take my stuff.
Oh no, I don't give a shit. I learned like a couple of almost 2 years ago that if I'm playing with you folks, you hard asses, I'm just gonna play a barbarian. I don't give a shit. I don't want stuff. Don't weigh me down. You can't. All you can do is kill me.
Come on, that paladin you play was the chef's kiss. I can only have so many things on my list. Wait, we're playing Pathfinder, not second edition. You can have more than just 10 things.
Oh no, I couldn't.
So, what about you, Mar? Do you ever use random events to coax roleplay out of your players? Whatever the random event might be.
I mean, it's something that I personally find to be a lot of fun because, like, the trick is to make it so that the random event isn't, like, oh no, you're all going to die now. No, not like that. But I mean, just something to give the players something that they need to do, and just prompt them to act on what happened. Because like the whole like thing with like having the party bed down and sleep. You know, it's like you might have a roll a random event, and one of the party members wakes up in the middle of the night to realize that they put their bedroll a little bit too close to a small creek, and now their feet are wet, and now they have to move it, and it's not really a big deal. It's not like you're doing a combat encounter, but it gives the player something that they need to act on and think about and, you know, act out. And
The player's pneumonia.
And you don't even have to have it interrupt them sleeping, because they wake up, they move their stuff for 5 minutes, and then you go back to bed. You know.
I think one of my favorite random events that I pulled, and this was recently, and it stirred the players to prejudice violence against the acting force. They had no healer amongst them. Nobody wanted to play the Band-Aid. So I had made a GM PC, or an NPC that's traveling with the party to be the Band-Aid. And the character took good care of the players' characters, constantly healing them, offering support when needed. And the players, their characters grew to really like this NPC that was traveling with them. Then I vanished that NPC. That NPC was taken right in front of their eyes, and they couldn't do anything about it. It's not that they couldn't act. It was the NPC or the enemy that they were facing had the ability to basically make off with the character via teleportation magic, because the healer had been knocked down to I think negative hit points. So the character was unconscious and therefore a willing subject. They didn't get a will save on the teleport. So now that healer NPC is missing, gone, and the players were so stirred to action that they started a manhunt in that campaign, and it was very much a Kingmaker style game or a hex crawl game, and they went on a mission to retrieve that NPC healer. Like, they moved heaven and earth to go get her. And honestly, I think that was some of the best role play decisions that the crew had made. It wasn't the end of the game. It was very much the middle of the game, and they're like, yeah, no, we're going to pull out all the stops. We're going to pull in every resource we can, and we are going to get that NPC back, because no, they don't get to do this.
There was a trail of bodies. There was a trail of bodies.
Like Marines with their corpsmen, right? Nobody messes with the dock.
Right,
Right. So apparently, L has a final question for everyone on the panel. When a GM, when as a game master, you ask your players these things instead of other game masters to find what the players want from the game. Hold on, let me reread that one.
I understand the question.
As a game master.
I think
okay. So yeah, when do you ask?
When do you ask? I completely understand that question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you ask. I ask at the beginning of every
mental voice inflection. Okay, awesome.
Say, hey, what does everybody want? How is the game going? It's the whole what, and then also at the postmortem, what did we do well? How can we improve? In terms of the meta stuff, the actual role playing. I'm a big fan of asking that question, because again, it's a process, it's a journey. We are gaming. So,
and
there's also the session 0, right? What are your expectations for the game?
Yep. That's going to be both my answers as well. Is session 0, I ask, what are your goals? What would you like to accomplish? And then at the end of every session, I and Conall can attest to this. I ask, hey, are there any questions, comments, concerns? Bring them to me and, let me know, like, what's going on. How'd you like it? It's called the tribunal.
I wasn't getting enough archery stuff. That was my mother. So I'm going to take this holy relic and I'm going to sell it so I get some more archery stuff. You did what? Nothing.
Conall, what about you? When and how often do you ask your players, what they want from the game?
The cheap answer is session 0. It's not a bad answer. It's just the cheap answer. But if it is more than the week's episode of Power Ranger type gaming, where there's actually more to it than just the one-shot module that I run at the shop, I'll ask them, of course, in the very beginning, and I'll ask in the middle. I'm like, "Are you sure? Are you happy with your character? We've done this now. You're now level 3 with Pathfinder with 5th edition. You have these choices. Do you want it, or 5? Do you want to stay the route that you're going, or would you like to change things up?" And I'm okay if a player says, I've been running this character for the last 5 levels. I'm just not feeling it anymore, or the lust for playing this character is just not there. I will let them trade out character once, because I get it. Sometimes, this is a great idea. I'm enjoying this character. Then by 5th, 6th, 7th levels, like, this guy is not just, I'm not feeling it. It's just not gelling in my headspace. And, I was cool enough to have Jaide. It's like, "Hey, Jaide, this drunken monk is not working the way I want it to. You mind if I bring in somebody else?" And you said, "Yeah." So if the player's not digging the character, is not working for them, sometimes it's okay to say, "Sure, bring something else in." But the only way you're going to do that is talking to them in the very beginning and maybe the middle of the campaign, or where, a good middle level at being 5 or 10 or whatever. And are you still happy with your character? So that's how I handle it.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Mar? Do you how often do you ask your players, with what's going on, and if they're enjoying the game, or even like what their goals are as individuals?
Well, going back to one thing he mentioned is that it's like changing characters. You don't necessarily need to completely remove your current character from the story. Like, you, in one of the Hyperborea games I was in, we actually had multiple characters in the story at the same time. And that was just a thing we did because, one, Hyperborea is one of those games. It's like, "Oh no, you died. Next character." One of those games. So it's like, to a certain extent, that gave you the option of having a character ready to play, so you can make a new character after the session instead of during the session. But also there's the fact that it's like, okay, I don't feel like playing a healer today. I would rather play a fighter, so I'll play the other character instead.
Okay. And lastly, Shadow. This is again L's question. When do you, as a game master, ask your players, for feedback on what about their character and about where the character's going? Hello, Shadow. If you're there, you're muted.
Sorry. I typed in most of my answer, that being, session 0, and then after or before each game, I should say. But back in the day when I was playing with a particular group, my players would call me. I had at least 3 players that would call me every single day about the next game. I mean, they were, mind you, this was many, many years ago, and we played every day, but they'd still call me before the game, whether it be on their lunch break or whatever. They were just, the enthusiasm for the game from this particular time period that I'm talking about, I have yet to see that kind of enthusiasm in a decade or more. It was, we literally played every single day, every chance we got. And if somebody didn't make it, sucks to be them, because we were playing. But they would call me, all the time. And I had the opportunity to discuss things, because they would be hitting me up with questions, tell me about this, or could I maybe, what would I have to do to make this happen, or things like that, and they try to be coy about it and not, tell me exactly what their plans were, so I couldn't start plotting to screw them over, because they knew I would. But I raised good players, and they went on to do all kinds of fun things. But I think it would be very helpful for the hobby and our regular groups if we communicated as often as possible. Even just social calls. Hey, what's up? What are you doing? We used to, use this thing called the phone, not just to, push buttons, but to actually, sit and listen and actually pay attention to what our friends and family were actually saying on that device.
That doesn't cost money.
Archaic.
I know. Well, it was a big deal. We'd previously only had smoke signals and letter writing, and if you missed a letter, but encourage your players to feel free to communicate with you whenever they want. Make yourself readily available. I mean, don't let them call you at 2:00 in the morning drunk. Hey, can my character? No. But if you can, communicate more with your players and you'll get a lot more out of the next game session, because they can leave the Mother May I stuff for then. You know what I mean? They can also come to actually, be better friends. Call them up just to see what the hell's going on. How you doing, man? It doesn't have to be a game call, but guess what? It'll be a game call.
I'm not calling a 6-year-old.
Yeah,
I'm not calling a 7-year-old boy and, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I think I'm good.
Well, you know what? You're telling me you only play with kids and you only play with people from the shop? You don't have any other games going on?
Well, with the
it's
shop,
all pay DM thing for you. You're not in any actual. I know you're in Bruce's game. You tell me you never call Bruce.
Why would I have to? I talk to him every Thursday.
But just you man to man.
No, I mean we talk, but it's not like.
Dude, if I had Bruce's phone number, I would call him every freaking day. I call you guys, but you're not.
Yeah,
Bruce.
I know better.
Yeah, and I work the midnight shift, so sometimes you can catch me at Discord at 2:00 in the morning.
We've had those many conversations. Yes, we both have insane hours.
I get what you're saying with getting. I mean, my Monday group I'm playing with a mutual friend of mine and Jade's, and I talk to him half the time when we talk. It's not about gaming; it's about combat history or making alcohol anymore.
You're not making alcohol anymore?
What? Oh no, making alcohol. It's cheaper to make it then drink it than to buy it then drink it. You're literally pissing away your money that way around.
Watch out for the revenue.
Well, I hope this stream has been fairly informative, or maybe even thought-provoking for some. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please make sure to hit that like button. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel and to the channels listed in the video's description below. And until next time, this has been Gatekeepers. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a great night.